Hello, welcome to Claret and Blue. My name's Dan Rowlands. I'm joined by a special guest this afternoon, Jamie Kemble, live from Valencia. How are you, Jamie?
I'm very good, thank you. Very hot, but surviving.
Good, yeah. My uncle lives in Valencia, and he sent me a WhatsApp the other day saying it was 41 degrees over the weekend, and I was like, well, I struggle over here when it's about 20, so I don't envy that part of it at all. You're here today to talk about Pau Torres, almost the expert opinion video that we promised last week. Now, you used to work for our company. You were one of our sister titles at the Leicester Mercury. We crossed paths very briefly before the 2020 COVID pandemic. So this video will be titled the lowdown on Pau Torres, what Aston Villa are getting here. First of all, before we get into the nuts and bolts of his strengths and his weaknesses and all those kind of things, what's your just kind of general feeling towards this transfer?
I think the overriding feeling is it's a real steal for Villa in pretty much all categories, I guess. I mean, this is obviously a player who's been linked with some really big moves over the last couple of years and deservedly as well. He turned down Tottenham to stay at Villarreal and play in the Champions League. He's already achieved a lot in his career, won the Europa League, played in the Champions League semi-finals, played at the Euros for Spain, the World Cup and so on. And everyone always felt that his next move would be a really big one. I think the reason that, with no respect to Villa, not to put in that top category, that it hasn't quite worked out like that is probably just the centre-back market this year and the timing of it. I think it's just come to a time where he needs that new opportunity now and deserves one as well. Obviously, Villarreal sportingly have done better than Villa over the last couple of decades, I guess, but Villa are a big club with a big platform. Of course, you appreciate that, and that's the opportunity side of it. So I think Villa, Pau Torres is probably a level above where Villa are right now. Obviously, the ambitious club could go towards that level. So there's a steal in that sense, and of course, the fee is a huge steal as well. And Villa got lucky that Villarreal have done Pau a favour in letting him go at any cost, I guess, at this stage, and let him go for a little bit cheaper as well. So it's just a big steal all round, I think, because he should maybe have gone to a top level club, but hasn't, and probably for a bigger fee as well. So yeah, it's a great signing for Villa, no doubt.
I should clarify that I called you an expert before we started this, and I haven't explained why, because you got a Welsh accent, you came from Leicester, you now live in Valencia. What's going on there? You're a Villarreal fan, aren't you? So you've seen a lot of Pau Torres over the years. Can you explain how a Welsh lad goes via Leicester to Valencia supporting Villarreal? What happened there?
Yeah, it's kind of started when I was maybe like 12, 13, when on a paid school trip. I also paid in there because everyone calls me posh if you go to a school trip to Villarreal, but definitely paid for it. But yeah, kind of I guess behind the scenes week, get to train at Villarreal and all that kind of thing. Meet the players at the time, which have been Pau Torres, Capdevila, some of the brilliant players back then. And that kind of stuck with me, I guess. Didn't become a Villarreal fan overnight, not quite that seducible, but yeah, over the years, just kind of fell in love with the club, the way it's run, the character of the club. Came over to see a couple of games, probably 6-7 years ago now, and then moved to Spain a couple of years ago and became a season ticket holder 2 years ago, I think now. And so, yeah, I get to watch the club every week, and I've been watching Pau for some time now.
What player are Villa getting here? Because you said at the start about like he could have gone to a club above the level of Aston Villa, which, obviously this is an Aston Villa podcast and we don't want to speak down on Aston Villa, but let's face it, they're not a Champions League club. They're not competing for the Premier League title. Not yet, at least. They might one day, but not right now. With Villarreal next season, he would have been playing in the Europa League. Villarreal finished 5th in La Liga. Aston Villa finished 7th, and it's the Conference League. So from a European perspective next season, it's a step down, but you can't deny that the Premier League is, it's the big league, isn't it? It's the league that players want to play in, and it is a different kind of step up in some aspects to La Liga as well. In the video that we did last week, I said that he's a Champions League level player, and some people kind of kick back on that, saying, well, the Champions League club didn't come in for him, so no, he isn't. He's playing in the Champions League with Villarreal, recently getting to the semi-final, so this guy, just because he's not in the Champions League with Villarreal next season or Aston Villa next season, he has the capabilities to be playing in a Champions League side, was my opinion. From someone who's watching him every week, is he a Champions League level player?
Yeah, for sure. I think he's proved that. I think, to fight back on some of the comments you mentioned, I mean, this is a player who went to the Champions League with Villarreal and reached the semi-finals, no less. And at the start of that season was offered the chance to play in the Champions League with another team in Tottenham at the time. So it wasn't as if he just stumbled into the Champions League with Villarreal. It was recognised that he was a Champions League quality player at that time. And, I think it's just down to timing that it hasn't worked out that way this summer. a lot of the top clubs have already got really good centre-backs. Been big investment in that area over the last few years. Probably started by Van Dijk, whenever that was. And teams have been spending more generally on centre-backs anyway. So it's a bit of a crowded market. And teams are paying a lot for players in that position these days. But, like I said, I think he's proven it. He reached semi-final with Villarreal and was undoubtedly a really key player in reaching that stage of the competition. He won the Europa League with the club the year before. Had huge plaudits for his role in that. He played at top level for Spain. Probably hasn't seen the best in for Spain yet, just due to partnerships. He's obviously a left-sided player, and Laporte's been playing in there as well. And when they tried to play Laporte and Pau Torres together, two left-footed centre-backs, and that unsurprisingly didn't work out. So I guess it's kind of one thing or another for Spain. But listen, he's proved himself at Villarreal time and time again. He's been right at the top of La Liga, performing at the best. He'd be one of the best defenders in La Liga, and certainly left-sided defenders in La Liga for some time. And it's all about that ability on the ball, which does not come too frequently for centre-backs, of course, increasingly more these days. But I mean, his ability on the ball is second to none, so much so you could, he's not a midfielder by any stretch, but you could probably play him there just based on his ability to play the ball. And that is undoubtedly what sets him apart from other players. And certainly coming into England, which is a territory less familiar to players on the ball. Of course, in La Liga, we're more familiar to it, that bringing the ball down, playing it out. And the Premier League is becoming more like that as we get more Spanish and European managers. But traditionally, it's been that headed out of the box and the man to be physical. But that's changing, and Pau Torres is obviously part of that now. And I think Villa will really benefit from having a player who can do that as good as anyone else, I suppose.
I just want to pick up on something you said there about the Spain links with Torres and Laporte playing together as two left-footers. And that's something that maybe sparked a bit of debate amongst Villa fans over the last week or so, that Tyrone Mings was arguably Villa's best centre-half last season, obviously left-footed. The kind of argument is that Mings and Torres couldn't play together because it's two left-footers, and that raises eyebrows that you don't see two left-footed players play together very often, because for some reason it's more rare than two right-footers, which most people probably wouldn't blink an eye at two right-footers playing together, but it is awkward maybe seeing two lefties play together. On the Laporte thing specifically, I guess, because I don't know whether there's any examples at Villarreal of Torres playing with another left-footer. Could he do that, or was it just a Laporte-Torres thing that was a problem?
It's an interesting one. I think there are factors, I think Torres and Laporte, it's not as if they came into, it was the Euros, it was a big problem, the last Euros. They've had, 2 weeks to prepare for the competition. That centre-back role had been rotating all the time through the qualifiers. And then they were kind of thrown together for the Euros when it would have been Luis Enrique at the time. Wasn't quite sure on which centre-back pairing to go with. And it just didn't work out. So there are factors to that, I think. You have a good pre-season with another centre-back partner working together day in, day out. That could be different, I think. And also you got to obviously keep in mind that Laporte and Pau Torres are quite similar players in that it's ball on the floor first rather. And that may not, Tyrone Mings better than me, but he strikes me as more of a physical player and someone who will lead with the head more than Pau Torres. They may be able to complement each other in different ways, whereas with Spain, they're expected to get the ball down every time at centre-back and play it out. When you've got two players doing exactly the same thing on the same foot, preferring their same foot, that can be a little bit predictable when someone's pressing you from the other side. So I think there are factors, I couldn't sit here and say it's going to work perfectly or it's going to be a disaster. But I think as long as there are differences in how the two approach the game, I think that will help. There's probably a sense from England that he's not as physical in the air and so on. So I think it's probably true that he's not the tallest centre-back. He's 6'2", I think. In any sense, even with a right footer, it's probably best to play a more physical player next to him, just so you've got those two options in the centre-back. You've got kind of both areas covered. So yeah, I think as long as their strengths differ a little, I think they can complement each other well, as long as that is at play.
Yeah, we've seen under Emery that he wants to play out from the back and the centre-halves and the full-backs, and everybody has to kind of buy into that. And to be fair, Tyrone Mings and Ezri Konsa have both developed massively over the last 6 months at getting better than that. Whoever plays is going to have to play out from the back. So whether that is a problem that two left footers are doing it, I do think the things you mentioned there about the aerial ability or the set piece defending and things like that is a minor concern from some supporters, that he's not as physical as someone like Tyrone Mings. So if he's come in to replace Tyrone Mings, you can only have one left-footed centre-half. You lose what Mings brings to the team, and Torres doesn't quite have that. Whilst he's far superior on the ball than Mings would be, and any of our centre-halves are, you lose that kind of leadership and that presence, I guess, that Tyrone Mings has. So I would like to see them both play together, and Emery will know exactly how he wants these guys to work anyway. He won't have signed them thinking, where do I play Pau Torres? Like, he's got a plan worked out already. Has he played in a back three at any stage and had success with that? Because we're looking at Consa, Mings, Thiago Carlos and Torres as 4 very good centre halves. Do you think maybe we'll play a back three and then there's more chance of rotation there? Has Torres done that?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, the Emery's largely played with a 4-3-3 at Villarreal, or did play the 4-3-3 at Villarreal. But yeah, I'd have no concerns with that really. I think because he's left-footed, to play on the left side. You can play on the left side centre back, have a physical player in the centre in the slightly more deeper central role, and then another ball playing centre back on the right hand side. I think that'd work perfectly, to be fair, because you can take the stress off physically. I think by playing 3 and then playing someone more physical rather in the centre holding. Yeah, I don't think there'd be any concern with that. And then his distribution ability to play out the wing back and keep the ball. I think it worked really well, to be fair.
I was scouring your Twitter before we started this. I just searched your name and Pau Torres just to kind of get some real world examples of you like live tweeting during a game as a supporter watching them. There's one that said, didn't quite appreciate the pass from Pau Torres to create that goal. How good is he at those balls in behind? My goodness. And there's also one that I've deleted from my document that said about like how he takes a cracking penalty. I don't know what game that was for, but I remember the one against Man United in the Europa League. Where's this penalty thing come from? Because Villa don't really have a penalty take at the moment, so if Pau Torres can step up and not want him from 12 yards, I'll take that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him take a whole bunch of penalties. I think everyone took a brilliant penalty in that night to the Europa League final, and that game meant most to Pau Torres, the Villarreal local lad, coming to play for his hometown club. So maybe just a spirit of the moment. I don't know, but I think he put it in top corner on the night, and maybe you never know. But yeah, I think that he's got that technical ability, hasn't he? So I think taking a penalty is no problem. And as for distributions, passing, he's a brilliant passer of the ball, undoubtedly, and that'll be one of the things Emery looked for when signing him. And like I said, probably that tweeted comment which game he's from, but you can play a lovely kind of long ball cross into the box, long ball forward. He'll set attacks in motion from the back, and he was always expected to under Emery. He still is under Setien now was at Villarreal. So there's no concerns there. He'd be one of the best passing centre backs in the Premier League, I would think.
We've read a quote in the last episode we did, and I'd urge people to go back to listen to that because I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit here. So there was a quote on one of our other sister titles, Football.London, when Emery was still the manager at Villarreal, saying that Pau Torres is unlike any centre half he's ever seen at PSG and Arsenal and everywhere else he's been. What will that relationship be like between Torres and Emery and them kind of relinking back together? Because any manager bringing any player into pre-season and getting them to learn their ways and whatnot and kind of settling them into a new country and a new club is vitally important for any manager. But that process is sped up a little bit by the fact that Emery and Torres already know each other very well. How important will that relationship be, do you think?
Vital, I think. I think it's one of the things that stood out for me in this deal because, someone who's watched Pau Torres over the last few years and, love him as a player, as a bloke, he's great as well. He's much loved at Villarreal. Yeah, we wanted, it's no secret, we wanted him to go to the highest club possible for his next move. And obviously that wasn't the case here. Again, no disrespect to Villa, it's just not where the club are at the moment. But I take a great deal of comfort, I think, in seeing that he's gone to work with Emery because any player to go into any new leagues is a tough adaptation process. It happens quicker for some than others. We saw Lisandro Martinez, who was now billed one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League all of a sudden. And, he had a terrible start to life in the Premier League. And he was fortunate to have a manager who believed in him. What you don't want to see is a player of Pau Torres' calibre go to a Premier League side, get a couple of games and then thrown out because things go badly. And that can happen and has happened to so many players going to new leagues. And the Emery factor almost guarantees that doesn't happen. Emery just loves Pau Torres, again, as a player, as a person. The two got on like a house on fire at Villarreal at every press conference, certainly in the Europa League. This was like, we've got to win this for Pau Torres. He's just the local lad, I guess, the way of putting it. He just kept re-emphasising that we've got to do it for Pau Torres. I think there's a Villarreal documentary about you winning the Europa League, and he's in the changing room half time in I think it was the final, and he was like, "We've got to do this for Pau Torres." That was the kind of relationship these two had. They absolutely loved each other, and I think that'll continue. And it guarantees that he'll get time, he'll get opportunities, and if it doesn't work out, finally find a way for him to work out, and not just because of the fee, but because he wants him to succeed. And with the quote you mentioned there, it's clear that he wants him to succeed as a player. He believes in him. He'd get the opportunity for that to happen. He'll help him improve. He'll help him settle into the Premier League. Obviously, this isn't Emery's first rodeo in the Premier League either, so he knows the differences between La Liga, Ligue 1, Premier League, etc. So that relationship, I think, will be vital, and it gives me a lot of comfort seeing him go on to another club and almost being guaranteed that stepping stone, the stepping path to success, because you need someone to believe in you ultimately.
That's really comforting to me as well, knowing that the manager and this new signing get on like a house on fire, because that obviously bodes well. What about his kind of potential then? You kind of look at the age and go, 26, he's in his prime, like he should only be getting better from here on out. We've said a couple of times, and you've said about him being a Champions League level player, and ultimately if Villa don't match the ambitions of the players they sign, and Villa are still doing well, these players will get hand-put to clubs that are in the Champions League. But obviously as supporters, and I kind of said in our end of season show last season that why can't we have a crack at the top four? Like, if Newcastle did it, why can't we? So you'd like to think that Villa will match the ambitions, and if we get into the top four, Torres and the likes of Martinez and people like that stay with us because that's where they want to be as well. Is that his kind of ceiling, do you think, playing in the Champions League regularly? That's what you could see him doing, hopefully with Aston Villa.
Yeah, for sure. He's, like I said, linked with Manchester United regularly over the last few years, and Bayern Munich
this year as well.
And yeah, for sure. So that's the kind of level he's looking at, I guess. How that goes from here, who knows? Because there's an element of risk, isn't there, of joining a club like Villa who've got big ambitions, but I'm not there yet. How does he fit in? How does he stand out at Villa? It's obviously a difficult process fitting into another league, and it's difficult to stand out right away. It might take a couple of years, and is that progression path? Where does it go from there? We'll see. But yeah, I think he's a player with immense potential, much because he stands out. He's left footer, like you said, they're not that common these days, left-footed centre-backs, and certainly not left-footed centre-backs who can play with the ball in their feet. That attracts, those players are attractive to the very best managers, the Pep Guardiolas, etc. He'll benefit from that in the future, I think. He's a player with big potential. I'm sure people will disagree about what his potential is. Certainly, but after this season, I guess it wasn't Villarreal's best season. They probably should have been in top four, but things happened. Gerard Moreno was injured again. They changed managers. That was your fault. So yeah, it's a bit of a disruptive season.
Sorry then, but I'm not really.
Yeah, it was inevitable at some stage. But yeah, they only finished a couple of points behind Real Sociedad in fourth. So that it was a kind of, I guess, from the overall thing was it was an opportunity missed up to finish in the top four. Sevilla way off it, and but also, like I said, Real Sociedad didn't have the kind of change of manager, so the factors behind that, and I guess Pau's not reputation, but the hype around him may have suffered a little bit from Villarreal. Slightly disappointing, and they went out to your Conference League because they put kids out in that competition as well. So if you come off the reaching Champions League semi-final or win the Europa League, the hype is just everywhere, and everyone's like, you can go wherever he wants. He's one of the best centre backs, and then you come off a season like that, it's a little bit tapered a little bit, I think, and that's what he is at the moment. I think people disagree on what his ceiling is, but listen, for me, he's already proved he's Champions League ready player. You don't reach semi-finals of the Champions League and play every game, until the semi-finals and cope perfectly fine and not be a Champions League caliber player. That's the litmus test, right?
I don't want to focus on weaknesses too much because it's kind of a positive podcast. We're signing a big player here, but we've got to touch on it because every time we do one of these new signings videos, we say, let's do strengths and weaknesses. Is there anything in his game or his personality that you kind of think he might not be able to translate what he's done over a long spell at Villarreal into Aston Villa in the Premier League? Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I think the ball playing thing is fine because, even if it takes some time to get adjusted to, Emery's the kind of manager who says, play with the ball at the feet, and if something goes wrong, then it's my fault. He's that kind of manager. We saw Geronimo Rulli, the keeper at Villarreal, who repeatedly made mistakes with the ball at his feet, and Emery would come out and say, well, I asked him to do that. If it doesn't happen, if he makes mistakes, that's on me, So if Pau Torres makes mistakes like that, I'm sure Mings has along the way, etc. Emery's going to take the blame for that. He takes that risk when he asks players to do that from the back. And Pau Torres has been asked to do that at Villarreal, hold on to the ball to the very last second. And there have been one or two mistakes, not many for a player who does what he does, to be fair. But yeah, he's has to keep on to the ball to the very last second and then give it out, create space in behind, let the press come to him and exploit that. So there are probably going to be slight mistakes on the ball. That's kind of comes with the way Emery plays, I think. In terms of actual weaknesses, I guess, like I mentioned, he's not a tallest of centre-backs, so 6'4" centre-back, 6'5" out there. He can head the ball perfectly fine. He's scored headers of Villarreal. He clears plenty of balls out the box with his head. Is that his main strength? No, probably not. And like I said, his first instinct is to bring the ball down. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates in the Premier League. Again, I think Emery asks that anyway, and he'll ask that more of even if players are more adapted in the air, like Mings and the other centre-backs. I think it is useful to have an aggressive centre-back next to him for that reason, though. I mean, obviously the Premier League is a bit more physical in terms of what they ask of centre-backs. And he's had Raul Albiol next to him for quite some time at Villarreal. He's a really commanding, experienced centre-back that he's been able to lean on in certain moments with aggressive strikers and so on. They've worked well. They were a brilliant partnership between them. Can rekindle some sort of version of that at Villa. It would be a really wise idea. And I think Mings is quite similar to that kind of profile player, kind of dominant, aggressive. So I think there's something to work on there. So I guess we'll see how his kind of weaknesses play out in the Premier League, because it is a different style. But what I'm saying, I think, is that you can protect him against those weaknesses from the off by who you play around him, and that accounts for any signing, right? There's obviously you contribute, you kind of complement players across the whole starting 11. I'm sure that's what Emery will do. He'll know what Pau Torres isn't particularly, what's not his strength, and I think he'll complement that well. And like you said, he'll already have a plan for the centre back partnership or back three or whatever he's going to do, and we'll see. I think he's better than like I said, than people give him credit for, but it's true that he's not like an absolute unit. He's quite lean, and but we've seen Lisandro Martinez, we've seen him get away with it plenty now, and now that he's comfortable at Manchester United. So the Premier League's changing, I think, so I think he'd benefit from that.
Definitely is, and the way you talk about him playing next to like a powerful centre half, it feels like Mings and Torres could be a great partnership. It's just the two left-footed thing that is the only minor one. If Mings was a right-footed, you'd be going, oh, this looks good, this does, and it could still be that, but that two left-footed is going to raise a few eyebrows with a couple of people. Finally, I just wanted to talk about what he is as a man, as a character. Villa seem to have acquired obviously good transfers in terms of players on the pitch, but good people as well, which seems important to the club, having a good dressing room of good people in there. Torres has been at Villarreal since he was a child, essentially. What kind of legacy does he leave behind there, and what kind of person is he? What does he bring off the pitch?
Yeah, in terms of legacy, club legend is always going to be. He's one of the few people. Villarreal is a town of 50,000 people. So while the academy system is brilliant, most kids come in from different provinces, etc. So you don't actually get that many people who are born in Villarreal. It's a very small town, like I said. So he's one of the few who's come through, and not only that, he's come through and represented the club brilliantly on and off the pitch. Won the Europa League, like I said, Champions League semi-finals. He's achieved history at Villarreal. He's loved for that. He's always taken part in the off-field activities. He's always central to the community efforts. Relatively quiet, happy fella. Yeah, that's all I can say. He's just nice. He always seems a nice guy whenever he's speaking to the press or anyone else. Gets on with teammates well, and he can be a leader on the pitch for sure. And obviously there's a little bit of bias in that it always felt like Villarreal is his club, and it is. So it always meant that much more to him. It'll be interesting to see how that translates to a club that he hasn't got an affiliation to yet. The professional football players, of course, they've got that competitive ability set in any way. So yeah, he has been a leader on the pitch. He's not the leader. He's never been that. There's been bigger voices like Raul Albiol in the dressing room, but yeah, an ultimate professional on and off the pitch, and Emery knows that. I think he must have said that about him in the past, and that'd be a big reason behind signing him as well. So I think it's interesting what you said about signing good people. That is a huge factor for me, especially when clubs get money like Villa have. It's easy to just go and sign talented players, but it really works out unless you've got a squad that can buy in professionally on and off the pitch, and Pau will only contribute towards that, I think.
Yeah, lovely stuff, Jamie. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Very insightful, fascinating to listen to, and hopefully Villa fans watching along with this will feel like they know more about Pau Torres as a player and as a person as well. So Jamie, thanks for your time. Go and enjoy some sunny weather and go to the beach or something. I don't know.
Still got to work, unfortunately, before the beach, so back on with that.
Yeah, lovely stuff, Jamie. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for watching this podcast. Leave a comment down below what you think of the Pau Torres signing. Like I said, Jamie, thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.